Hello and welcome to the Liner Notes Club podcast. I'm Phil, and today we're joined by one of the most distinctive voices to come out of the original punk movement, songwriter, author and frontman of the Adverts, TV Smith. I had the pleasure of seeing one of his solo acoustic shows at the back end of last year, and what really struck me was his sharp observations, his humour, his honesty, his social commentary. And in this conversation we talk about his early days, the formation of the Adverts, the explosion of punk in London, and what it was like to be at the centre of it all. So I hope you enjoy it. This is my conversation with TV Smith. Tim, thanks for joining me.
Phil,
this morning.
We're here.
We saw you about 4 weeks ago at Bonalswick at the Arts Centre. Great little gig downstairs.
Yeah, I love
venue.
it. One of my favourite venues in the country, if not the favourite. Now I've been there once. I shall certainly hope to come back.
It was great. I must admit, it was my introduction to you, and I really enjoyed it.
Great.
I came away with a real good buzz. It was great.
Cool. Yeah.
Can you take us all the way back to your formative years and what got you into this whole thing, and what made you identify music as your medium to express yourself?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? What you choose, when you're a kid and you don't really know what you're going to do. But I was drawn towards music. Like a lot of kids, I was drawn towards pop music, and grew up listening to the Beatles and playing air guitar with a tennis racket and jumping up and down on the sofa to "She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah," and I suppose kind of it just goes in automatically, the power that music's got. And so yeah, I love pop music growing up. But what happened really was I started writing poetry when I was a teenager. So then I really got into words and what you could do with words. And when I found a way to put those two together, it was more than the sum of its parts. The music and the words together had this great power, so I was like writing poetry and hearing tunes in my head that I didn't really know how to express. So I learnt how to play a bit of guitar and tried to put some poems to what little I could do on guitar, and there was suddenly this whole new thing, two things had fused together and a brand new thing had come out. So I kind of got hooked to songwriting, and songwriting's always been what I do, really.
Has that always been your process? Words first, then transfer it to a guitar or a bit of all sorts? No,
absolutely not like that. And it wasn't then either. It was just like bits and pieces of tunes would come into my head as with bits and pieces of words, and I still write. I still write. The two come together. They're all kind of like mixed up all the time, and I tend to find that they help each other out as well. If I get stuck where I'm going on the lyrics, then a bit of a tune will come, and that'll push the lyrics forward, and vice versa. If I can't find a melody I'm happy with, some words will spring up, and the melody will develop out of it. But there isn't for me anyway. There's not a formula. It's just kind of sit down and start writing and see what happens.
Can you talk us through sort of your early bands and that sort of thing? And were you sort of appointed chief songwriter in those setups, or was it a communal thing where you'd all chip in?
Well, I appointed myself chief songwriter. I basically formed the bands to, as my vehicle for getting the songs out there. That's what I've always done. My first band was 1975 when I was in art college in Torquay, and I formed a band called Sleaze, which were kind of prog, pre-punk, glam band, and influenced by what I was listening to at the time, which was Bowie and Roxy music and Cockney Rebel and all those kind of odd end of glam. And and I formed that because I had songs I wanted to be able to play them. And then when I moved up to London to form the Adverts, it was the same thing, but it's just a different time, and everything got much sharper and more defined and more aggressive and faster. So the songs, adapted to the feel in the air at the time. And when the Adverts broke up, I did the same thing with the Explorers. I moved on and to do that. I had a band called Cheap a while after that, and it was towards the end of Cheap when I found I was getting nowhere with bands, that Attila the Stockbroker, who you probably know is a ranting punk poet, said to me, "Why don't you come and do a solo gig? You know, you've always written all the songs on guitar. You've always sung. You know what? You know, come support me at a gig and just try some of the songs on your own." And to me, that was like terrifying because I'd never done anything like that. You know, I played at home and written the songs at home on my own, but I'd never actually thought of going up on stage and holding a guitar and actually presenting them to an audience. So to me, that was one of the most scariest things I've ever done. But when I did it and saw that it worked and that the audiences liked it, and there was this like real direct communication, you know, one to one, you know, you're looking people straight in the eye and they're looking back at you and there's no hiding, you know, it's really thrilling and addictive. So that was a real turning point for me, and that's when I started concentrating on playing solo.
Can you take us back to your first forays in London? I imagine going from Torquay to London, it must have been a fairly sort of assault on the senses. Did you feel a little bit sort of cast adrift down there, and you wanted to just be in the thick of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the band I had there, you know, was just no one was interested. Basically, it's you know, it was cover bands, you know, and that was it. You know, if you weren't playing sounding like Free or Wishbone Ash or you know Genesis or something, then no one was interested. So so I could feel, you know, we were really battling against it down there, and at the same time, or well, shortly afterwards, at least, he started to get the first kind of. I remember going up to London and got the Ramones album. I thought, well, this this is amazing. These songs are 1.5 minutes long, you know, and silly and fun, and and I thought that was great, you know, and then started to hear the first reports of the Sex Pistols playing, and I thought, well, this is just exactly what I want, you know. There's no point in me hanging down here in the middle of Devon when something's going on up in London that is exactly what I want to be a part of. So basically, moved up and formed the Adverts and started to put across the songs that way. You know, in January 1977, just after the Roxy Club had opened, we had 2 gigs in the Roxy Club in the first 2 weeks. You know, and we kind of established ourselves right in the middle of that punk scene. Although we didn't even call it punk in those days, we didn't know what it was, but we knew something was happening, and my stuff fitted into it.
Do you think music still has that power? Obviously, punk has never been sort of 12 musical notes. It's more of a sort of social catalyst, if anything, and an attitude and a unity. Do you think music still has the power to do that now? I mean, you can go online and find anything and be totally shocked with violence and all kinds of horrible stuff. The threshold's just been obliterated. Do you think
Yeah,
that
the,
music can still hold the power and move people and like that?
yes, I do, you know, the trouble with you know, the internet being, you know, where people go to look for music is that, you know, it's great on one side that there's so much opportunity. And if I was a band starting out, I would definitely be heading to the internet to try and spread my stuff about as much as possible, you know, without being having record companies interfering. But the you know, the downside is obviously that there is so much, you know, available without any kind of like, you know, way to negotiate your way through what you might want, you know, you know, or what might appeal to you. Um, because you know, having a computer tell me that the algorithm says that I'm going to like this piece of music does not work for me in any way. The algorithm does not capture the magic of what makes a band appeal to you. You know, that is something the computer and AI and algorithms cannot in any way handle. You know, it's indefinable, and that's really why live music to me is the most important way of you know, putting music across and consuming music, because it is, you know, you're direct, you're in the room, and there's no kind of no grey area. Is this what appeals to me or not? You're there, and you feel that transference going on and that magic, and you either feel it or you don't. So
Do you think people are craving that connection and that unity in a room, experiencing one thing in a room?
yeah, definitely, and that's why I do it. Because it's so massively important. I love making records, and I love giving. People can take home the stuff and hear it at home, but there's nothing like the room. And being in the room with people. And I think people are. It's kind of become an underground thing now. Live music is like underground. Like your venue in Barn Oldswick. What you got, 50 or 60 people. But to me that has much more of the atmosphere that you want than a stadium gig with some super successful bands, and everyone watching on a screen from a mile away. And I know a lot of the bands who end up in stadiums and big venues, well, they are a victim of their own success, and good luck to them. It's the only way to do it. But for a lot of us artists who are trying to do something kind of real and sincere and authentic, the way forward now is the little venues, where you are looking at each other in the eye and you know exactly what's going on.
Definitely. Also, from a musician's point of view, these bigger gigs, I imagine they're not great fun to play, but you can't see anything. You got smoke machine going, you've got lights in your eyes. Sound on stage might not be particularly good. But obviously, there's sort of prestige and kudos, whatever that comes along with those sort of things. From an actual sort of experience point of view, I think a lot of people I'm finding that I'm sort of meeting, they like coming back and getting back to what it's all about, and in a room with people and having that back and forth and visibly moving people, and you got people a matter of feet away from you, and you're having that direct contact that
Yeah.
I feel people are really missing and craving.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, if you could do it, in a gig like Barn Oldswick, then you can do it anywhere, because that is it's not a technique, but if you can be genuine enough to do it in front of 30 people, you can do it to a stadium. To me, playing the bigger gigs, it's easier. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm less nervous going on in front of 500 people than I am going on in front of 50 people, because there is absolutely no hiding place in front of 50 people.
no, and you were absolutely relentless. You just you were that absolutely non-stop. I didn't come up for a
Well, once
whirlwind.
I want it to be, I sort of focus on what I'm doing and get the feel of what the audience wants, and then it is. I don't want to break, because I want to continue the kind of line and the theme and the way the songs are running into each other, and it's never kind of planned, or there's never a set list, and so it changes according to what venue it is and what the audience is like.
Mm. Just going back to the adverts for a little bit, for the uninitiated, one of the songs that brought you a decent amount of commercial success was Gary Gilmore's Eyes. Can you tell us a little bit about that sort of subject matter and what brought that to your attention in the first place, and the growth of the song?
I was seeing the story of Gilmore in the tabloids. I was going into work every day. I was working in a record packing factory in Soho, so I was on the tube for like 40 minutes a day there and 40 minutes back, and I'd pick up the papers that had been left behind on the seats, and every day there was this story about Gilmore, who was he'd held up a couple of gas stations and committed a couple of murders. It was a really sad kind of story. He was a real loser. He'd had a very violent upbringing. His father had beaten him, and he was really a bit of a sad case, and he'd committed these couple of murders, and he was on death row, and a liberal element was trying to hold up his execution, and he was saying he wanted that he wanted it to go ahead. I think it was the first execution they'd had in Utah for many years. So that was kind of like the story, a sad story, and it was being made into a big, hoo-ha, like the tabloids do. And I thought it was distasteful, to be honest. He said he wanted to be killed. He wanted to donate his eyes to go into someone else. He said it would be the only decent thing he'd done in his life. So that was kind of what inspired me to write a story, write a song that kind of told the story of a man, who donated his eyes, and someone wakes up in hospital and they read about this guy who donated his eyes anonymously and think, could that be his eyes in my head that I've just had donated? So I just really turned it into a sort of a bad taste horror kind of movie style song, because I wanted to satirize really what the way the papers were handling it, and say, well, if you're going to treat it like that, then I'll be even more bad taste than you. I mean, it was a time for it, in the time of punk, it was a time to do stuff like that, and I thought it made a point.
Yeah, I mean, there's the sensitivity from your part in the handling of that, which like you say, might not be immediately sort of discernible upon first listen, I mean, but yeah, there's a sensitivity there, and I think that's something I noticed across a lot of your songwriting, that there's an eloquence there that personally I've never sort of associated with punk. There's an eloquence there, and a great deal of humour in your stuff as well. Was this sort of like your sort of TV appearances and stuff like that? Was there any sort of conflict there with your punk sensibilities, or were you just glad of a platform and just get it out there? You never really overthought it all that much, Top of the Pops and that sort of thing?
No, I was definitely up for Top of the Pops. I kind of like, I found out about a lot of my favourite, music through Top of the Pops, because there'd always be, loads of terrible bands, and then you'd have, someone like Bowie come on and do Ziggy Stardust, and you think, whoa, that's what I'm watching this ridiculous program for, is because every now and then you'd see one of your favourites, or you might even, learn, find someone new, but it would be rare. So of course, I jumped at the chance to get on Top of the Pops, and it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. You're standing on painted plywood boxes, and cameramen were pushing audience members out of the way so they could get. Tony Blackman was literally laughing at us from the other side of the soundstage. They didn't want us there, I mean, that was quite clear. We were very much the unwelcome guests, but the record would enter the charts. They didn't have any choice.
So, moving a bit closer to present day, and can you just talk about the Lockdown project? Was that sort of songs that were brought together in a fairly short space of time and done from home?
Yeah, there were. I mean, actually, I record all my stuff here where I'm sitting now.
Right.
And the lockdown thing was quite interesting because there was obviously no choice. You couldn't go out, you couldn't socialise. There was this extraordinary, thing going on in society that we'd never seen anything like before. With everyone being isolated, and this virus going around that no one really knew anything about. Where it came from, what it did to you. Myself and my partner Sally, we both caught it in March 2020 and were really, really seriously ill with it, and there was no kind of medicine available. There was no vaccine. We couldn't even get paracetamol because all the shops have been stripped of like medication. So we both sort of lay in bed, thrashing around, sort of thinking we were going to die for a week or so. And so when I came out of that, and that was obviously very heavily on my mind. I had all my years, I think 55 concerts cancelled, including some enormous, the biggest gigs I'd ever done in Germany, supporting a big German band called Die Toten Hosen. Everything cancelled. So all this opportunity of that whole year had been pulled away from me. But I was alive. And that felt like a big bonus at the time, because I really was not sure where I was going to pull through. And so, yes, I had a lot to think about and a lot I wanted to write about, and couldn't go out. All the gigs had stopped, so I had no choice. I had plenty of time to sit down, think about what was going on, and start writing. And that's what I did. I came in here and I wrote the first song on the album, and very quickly. Sometimes songs come quickly, sometimes they take months. but I wrote it within a couple of days. And then when I'd done that, I came back in here and I wrote another one. And then I just went through actually literally song by song on the album, one by one, until they were all done. And then I sat down, I came back in here and I set up the microphones and I recorded them.
Brilliant. Well, when I saw you actually, one of the songs that really stuck in my mind was Back to the Good Old Days.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because that almost became a bit of a sort of political slogan, didn't it? And,
yeah.
And this harking back to
as if
to
it was
times
ever
gone.
as if it was never better, you know. Yeah, let's have them have the kids climbing up the chimneys again, you know. Like when governments run out of ideas, they try and convince you that it was all better in the past, but you know.
Yeah. And I remember smiling my way through that one, going back to the gig where I saw you last, small venue, everybody hanging on your every word, and I guess the social commentary that really resonates with people, it really came across.
Well, the nice thing is that people want to hear it, you know, and that's why it's worth still doing it, because you know you can do little gigs like that, and everyone is in the same room and they are on the same wavelength, and it's kind of, you know, for them it's nice to hear me singing about it, stuff that they believe in and understand, and for me it's great to see people want to hear it, because it reminds me, you know, it gives me hope that things aren't as bad as they seem to be, you know, in these extremely challenging times where to be honest, you don't know what the hell's going on, you know, like when you see what's going on with the world, you begin to wonder if you know if you're the only one who doesn't think like that. So you know, doing gigs is another. It's not just about the music; it's about like seeing a lot of people on the same wavelength and thinking the same kind of things.
What's 2026 looking like for you at the moment?
I'm hoping to complete writing on a new album, so I've got a lot of new material I'm writing at the moment, which I'm very happy and excited about. Definitely going to Australia. We're going to take a Australian version of the Adverts around Australia for a few weeks. I've got Rebellion coming up in the summer, of course. A few UK gigs here and there. Most important for me at the moment is finishing off writing some new songs.
And for anybody that's looking for a tonic to the noble Christmas fluff, you've got one of your own, you've got one of your own Christmas songs.
I have indeed. Christmas, bloody Christmas. Yes.
Christmas, bloody Christmas. Yeah,
It's out there on YouTube somewhere.
But I hope you can make a visit to Barnoldswick again after you finish with Australia.
Yeah, well, while I'm slogging around Australia, I can look forward to a visit to Barnoldswick.
I'm sure it'll be top of your mind. But yeah, I really appreciate your time this morning, and it's great to check in. And I'm looking forward to see what 2026 will bring. So thanks so much.
I'm going to come back to you with a bunch of new songs.
I shall look forward to it.
Super.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you.
So if you want to reach out to me, you can do that at phil@offthefloor.media with any contributions or guest suggestions, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.